Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Story Time. Are you well? I hope you're well. We're nearing up on that midweek. And so Story Time is just an opportunity for us to pause, as is the yoga practice itself. An opportunity for us to check in on what is, what's real, what's true in this moment. So all month long, I've been attempting to, honestly, I've been attempting to stay focused because my journey in this foot surgery and recovery has definitely tested some of my skills, some of my abilities that I thought were at this point second nature. And it's not to say that they're not. What I'm saying is that I have been challenged because of the unfamiliarity, the newness of this experience, this transition of recovering from surgery to repair a misalignment in my foot structure. So we've been correlating this journey of foot surgery with transparent alignment, or the philosophy rooted in yoga tradition that I teach as a practice of inspired living, a practice of being intentional, of having an alignment of our intention, our mind stuff, our attention, our energy stuff, and the actions that we engage in, our body stuff. Now, as you can probably already figure, even if this is your first introduction to me and the philosophy of yoga living by way of transparent alignment is really just a way of modernizing yoga living, or the teachings and practices of yoga. And so I want to talk just a bit about action. The thing that I'm most aware of in terms of action, doing and non-doing, undoing and redoing, the four simple categories to help us understand the dynamic of action, is that I'm exhausted. I'm doing so much less in terms of my daily toil, my work around the house, even my work around the studio. The amount of time that I'm spending at the studio is diminished greatly as I increase rest and therapeutic application of ice and elevation and all the other strategies to help with the restoration, with the healing and recovery of my foot. But despite that lesser schedule, despite that increased self-care in terms of rest and sleep and propping and icing, I'm exhausted. And it's not a surprise, right? If I was talking to you and you said that you just had foot surgery and you were exhausted, I would say, well, rightly so. Your body is working overtime to recover something that was a significant trauma, a trauma on a cellular level that tickles all of the energetic levels and layers that have been embodied in, right? Now, the fact that this surgery is coming this year is really kind of a delayed tactic. For the last 5 years, I've been doing all sorts of therapeutic interventions to try and alleviate what has been an increasing and growing intimacy with pain and discomfort in my feet, both of them. But even that, the last 5 years, is not the culmination. The action of using my foot has been a lifelong experience, right? From dancing and doing yoga, from walking and hiking, from bicycling cross country, all the things that I have done with my body have been endured by the way of my feet and the alignment, the literal. I'm talking the skeletal structure of how my bones were arranged in my foot based on the genetic material that I inherited. They've always been less stable. I've been compensating for that lack of stability for 50 years, and that has taken its toll. So when I remember that this is not just a 3-week or a 4-week journey of surgery and recovery, but this is a lifetime of reorienting. My body has done its best. And then based on the knowledge that I've studied and engaged in and practiced with as a yoga therapist, I've done everything that I know to do, everything that my teachers and my colleagues, and even working across the spectrum to other wellness modalities, from an acupuncturist perspective, from a physical therapist perspective, getting all of these inputs to come to the conclusion that now is the time to reorient the way that my foot is functioning so as to improve its ability to function with ease, to bring it into greater alignment with the intention of my body of moving gracefully through this world. And in doing so, allow my mind and my breath to work less. Now, in this interim, the action of non-doing is really hard for me. And this isn't a surprise. And yet the depth of how difficult it is more surprising every single day. I'm surprised at how challenging it is to get around on one leg only. I'm amazed at how simple things around my house have become hurdles and obstacles, whereas they've always been a little bit of an annoyance. I have clutter and children and pets and toys that are left out and shoes that are left out of where they belong, right? But none of that threatened my safety. It just threatened my calm abiding prior to this new mobility challenge. And now everything seems to be on that edge of pushing me over, not physically, but emotionally. The edge of being done with all of this is so close. And I can contribute that to what I know about the importance and the value of sleep. It's one of the reasons why it is one of the 10 primary self-care practices that we as wholeness practitioners, but also research professionals, advocate for cultivating not only a healthy living, but a life of joy and happiness. And my sleep quality has been shit. Between the burden of protecting my foot, the circulation of medication and pain relievers, as well as icing and not icing, all of that has been interrupting the flow of my sleep. And so it makes sense, right? It makes sense, but that doesn't make it any easier. And it doesn't make it truly an action that I can fix in this moment. It's an endurance test. It's a, can I stay with this in its uncomfortableness long enough to get through it, to get to the other side? But that's the truth of any real challenge, whether it's an emotional challenge, whether it's a financial burden challenge, whether it's a surgery, whether it's a relationship that is under transition, which truly every relationship is always under transition. It's just a matter of how severe that shift is and how ready we are to embrace and to guide that shift. So I did my due diligence. I did my research. I did all the prep work that I could, as far as even taking the time off that I usually take off to rest and recover in December. I redirected that energy to get done as many tasks as I could around the studio in preparation for being down with surgery. In other words, I kind of came into this resting period of healing and recovering of surgery already a little depleted, not just because the last 2 years of COVID challenge, but also because I really pushed myself those last 2 weeks before entering into the recovery stage of surgery. So by coming in, to be honest, a tad bit exhausted, and then to layer on this additional burden of literally the calories, the energy it takes for your body to heal is exponentially greater than the need to just exist. And yet, while this need of calorie burning to heal is focused on my foot, the rest of my leg is literally withering. I've measured my calf muscle, and in just 2 weeks, my calf muscle has lost an inch in diameter. Well, where did that inch go? Okay, well, as a informed exercise science professional and wellness professional, I know that it's just a matter of those tissues slackening. Those muscle tissues are still there, and they will rebound, they will rebuild when I am able to be weight bearing again. But in the meantime, because of the pain, because of the interruption of my normal schedule, thank goodness for the practice of breathing and even the practice of meditation, of calming and being still, because I can't do asana in the way that my body really wants to. The cramping in my ankle from the surgery in my toes, all the way up to the way that my body is holding the extra weight now of the added boot. All of these little nuances, these little shifts affect the core of how I'm showing up. All the more reason why compassion has to be the foundation. I had an interesting conversation with a client, with a student, just at the first of the year, and unknowingly, I think unintentionally, she was challenging me on this difference of opinion, that her opinion is that truth has to be the foundation and that compassion comes from there. And I challenged her that I really believe that compassion has to come first, because if we use truth in a harmful way, that undermines compassion and undermines truth. But can you ever undermine compassion? Can you show compassion in a way that causes harm? I don't know that you can. I think you can express false compassion, but that's both not compassion and not truth. So in practicing yoga, we really are, yes, looking to align our intention, attention, and action, even if that means we can't do the things that help bring us ease. And by nature of that path, we have to cultivate compassion. That means asking for help. That means being content to just breathe, to just be, even if it means I am in pain. As Thich Nhat Hanh, our beloved teacher who passed away this past week, helped me to learn, is that compassion has to come first before all the other practices, because without compassion, there is no humanity. There is no love. And so for my foot to heal, for my body to realign to the new orientation of my foot, for my spirit to get over the fact that my foot looks different, it's unfamiliar, it's less known because of this shift. I gotta remind myself, and the help of my circle to remind me as well, that this too shall pass. But in breathing and in welcoming compassion, offering compassion by way of massage and even visualization, I literally figure 8 healing energy around my foot and my ankle during my meditation practice as a way of honoring what I know and yet cannot prove, that our intention aligned with our attention in specific actions will not only bring us closer to intimacy with prana, it'll help us to live better, to live well, to live vibrantly. This is inspired living. This is an intentional practice of doing life in alignment. I think that's all I have to share today. But my challenge to you is to look at the actions that you're doing, both those that show up on whatever kind of calendar or date book you keep, but maybe even those that don't show up there. And why is there a discrepancy between what shows up and what doesn't show up? And how can you choose the actions that are most closely reflective to what you currently understand of your alignment, your intention, the access to attention, which is also access to effort and energy. In other words, my energy is low. So how can I honor that? Not as a permanent state of enabling myself to quit, but to honor that this too shall pass and to do what I can so as not to further deplete the resources that are available mentally, physically, emotionally, and even subtly in the energetic bodies. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing ourselves on the other side of whatever this cusp may be, your journey, your travel, and whatever's shifting in your world, and what's shifting in the world we share. Be well, and take care of you, and take care of those around you. Sometimes it's hard for us to ask for help. And so looking for those opportunities that we can serve in seva, service, the Sanskrit word, is an act of compassion and an act of love to support each other. May you breathe deeply and move freely. May you labor lovingly and live vibrantly. Namaste. Any stories to share on your end?
I don't think so.
Okay. You practicing compassion and kindness today?
Oh, absolutely. Last night was so, like putting William down to sleep. It was so different than the night before. I was like super, super angry and frustrated so quickly the night before. But last night it was like, I saw that anger coming up of why won't he listen and do what I want? And then I remembered, oh, that's why I ended up sleeping in my parents' bed for so many years, because they just didn't want to deal with this part of the frustration and the trying and losing sleep on your end because they won't go down.
Yeah.
So I just thought this, I read a quote by this guy I follow on Instagram. He's like a self-help kind of guy who said that his son asked him, Dad, how did you learn to be such a good dad if you didn't have one? And he said, son, I gave you what I longed for. And I realized this is exactly what I'm working for right now. Is this stuff sucks, but I wish my parents had done it. So I want to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I think that's probably the truth that I would resonate in the sense that I became a good teacher through my students. I became a good parent because of my children. I became a good partner because of my partner. I want to be the best I can be for them. And it's in that practice. That's where we choose the actions that help us to fulfill that intention. But it's the responsibility that we accept when we embrace our own agency, our own adulthood that says, yeah, I could have had a good, a bad, a neutral experience in whatever those earlier capacities were, with former relationships, with former, just my childhood and being parented by my parents. The longer I blame outside resources, the longer I suffer until I'm able to embrace that I have agency, I can learn new things, and I can do it differently, even if I don't have a guarantee that it's going to be perfect, right, effective, or be well received.
That is the stickiest part of this practice for me, is knowing that I'm going to keep screwing up again and again and again. The difference here is that I'm noticing it and trying to take advantage of noticing it. Whereas before, like you said, blaming external people, I'm staying in the yuck and stretching the other people around me's compassion to keep accepting me, even though I'm doing these wrong things. Whereas now I'm still stretching that compassion by doing the wrong thing, but then next time trying something new so that I can use their compassion effectively.
That's a beautiful example though, James, because that's exactly what Brene Brown means when she says that guilt isn't bad, but shame causes us to not have the internal energy to do something differently. So when we wrong someone, when we fail, even if it necessarily wasn't wrong, we just know that it wasn't our best, that desire to do better is the opposite of what we feel in that guilt. But it's guilt that often moves us to do it differently, to look for resources, to try something different, to be transparent and vulnerable and saying, I don't know what to do differently, but I know that's not what I want to do. But when that guilt transitions to our identity, that we fail to see our own agency and recognize our own power, that we start to associate our inability in that moment with our inability as an organ, right? As an element of nature, in which case, why bother? Because I can't affect change. My unworthiness is a quality of who I be. And that is the root of all lies and all untruths, all unloves or harms in our world. So the more that we can cultivate that permission to be imperfect, right? The gifts of imperfection are connection and compassion. And they're right there, because when we can receive it, we can also give it, and vice versa too. Awesome.